Okay, friends, hi. We are now working on the Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 41. And we are in a place where we are reviewing a section on the science of triangles from a treatise on cosmic fire. We have reviewed some of this at various points. We have just passed through the consideration of 6 different triangles, and we have talked about the manner in which the monadic ray stimulates the different centers in a triangle according to the nature of that center. We discussed first, second, and third ray monads in relationship to the stimulation of these centers. We discussed the way these triangles represent human beings at different stages of evolution. And we discussed as well the levels of the 3 points in each one of the triangles. Some are naturally higher than another, but there are also ways in which each of the 3 centers in any triangle, or points in any triangle, correlate most either with the first, second, or third ray. According to the level, the highest level will be generically related to the first, the middle level to the second, and the lowest level to the third. So it is a question as to how the stimulation actually does occur. I think it is reasonable to think of it as occurring in relation to the ray affinity of a center within the triangle. Now we have a little bit more of this to deal with. We're dealing with 6 different periods of development in the human being, beginning all the way from the vital Lemurian stage and moving on to that of the master of the wisdom finally. All these different periods show different triangular radiations, and in each one of us, a particular triangular radiation is operative at this time. Obviously, there will be many individual idiosyncrasies, but for people who are generally found at a particular stage of evolution, a particular triangle will be operative. The many differences, the many distinctions, the many individual peculiarities, this can be understood and handled by a master of the wisdom. He goes on to say, we must not infer from this that when the fire is centered in one triangle, it is not demonstrating in others. This is a crucial thought, as all the many triangles have some degree of vivification, or at least all the centers have some degree of vivification. The question is, which is the brightest and most central at a particular period of evolution? And all of us, let's say, if a treatise on esoteric psychology, volume 1 and 2, if this treatise is written for initiates of the first degree, then we are studying this book and we care about this book, psychology, etc., then let us say that we are speaking at least of stage number 5, spiritual man, to the 3rd initiation, heart, throat, and the 7 head centers gradually coming into full expression. Okay. Once the fire has free passage along any triangle, it flames continuously, which suggests that it does not if it does not have free passage. But always there is one triangle more radiant and luminous than the others. In other words, free passage may exist in some of these lower triangles, which we have already conquered, so to speak, which we have already developed. But one triangle will be the most luminous, more radiant and luminous than the others, And it is from these glowing triangles of light, issuing from wheels and vortices of fire, which are the chakras at a certain stage of development, that the clairvoyant and the teachers of the race can appraise a man's position in the scheme of things and judge of his attainment. Well, we sometimes wonder, how is it that the master is able to judge the level of accomplishment that we have attained? And he tells us that it is from the triangles and the luminosity of the triangles and the degree of free passage of the fire that the teacher is able to ascertain. I would also say that if he goes still deeper and he looks at the causal body, the egoic lotus, and the degree of unfoldment of the petals, he is also in a position to ascertain something of the development of the human being. Okay. At the culmination of life experience, and when man has reached his goal, each triangle is a radiant path of fire. All of the 6 here given, and each center a wheel of living fiery force rotating at terrific speed, speeds beyond which we can measure, but one day such measurement will be possible. The center at this stage not only rotates in a specific direction, but literally turns upon itself, forming a living, flaming, iridescent globe. See, it approximates the globe, which is a fuller figure than just a disk. Iridescent globe of pure fire, and holding within it a certain geometrical shape, yet withal vibrating so rapidly that the eye can scarcely follow it. So the wheel turns upon itself, which is a climactic 4th dimensional moment, and the geometrical shape may well be a triangle, perhaps equilateral, I suppose, equilateral isosceles. How does one spell that? Isosceles. Okay, that's not the correct spelling. Isosceles and scalene. Perhaps the 3-4-5 triangle. Anyway, the 3 types of triangles may indicate the monadic ray concerned. Certainly the geometrical shape in the center of the iridescent globe, I believe, will indicate the monadic ray. Anyway, it is there's such a rapid vibration that the eye, the clairvoyant eye even, can scarcely follow it. He's not talking about the normal physical eye. Above all, at the top of the head will be seen a fiery display that seems to put all other centers into insignificance. Indeed, the center at the top of the head is all-inclusive. It's a universe unto itself. It contains the prototype or the archetype of every other center within itself. From the heart of this many-petalled lotus, that is, the heart within the head, issues a flame of fire with the basic hue of a man's ray. Now, this could be the soul ray or monadic ray. I suspect, let us see, this flame mounts upward and seems to attract downward a sheet of electric light, which is the downflow from the spirit on the highest plane. So the way it looks at the moment is this is the indicator of the egoic ray, which is the same as the triadal ray, and attracts that sheet of electric light, which is the downflow of the monad. This marks the blending of the fires and the deliverance of man from the trammels of matter. This is the complete rescue of the immersed spirit. I think that we can look at this as the 4th initiation. Certainly it begins at that point, especially if we're going to deal with the soul ray, although the triadal ray really is the soul ray. one of the rays of the triad is the soul ray. So it is also by the type of hue that rises upward from the many-petalled lotus, from the heart of the many-petalled lotus, which will give the hint, I think, as to the nature of the secondary triadal ray, which is the soul ray. And if we want to learn more about that, we go to Esoteric Psychology 1, page 168 and 169. Man at the fourth degree is delivered from the trammels of matter, although we might say complete deliverance only occurs, finally, at the sixth initiation, and it depends on how we consider matter to be, because if we're considering matter to be the entire cosmic physical plane, then complete deliverance only occurs at the ninth initiation of refusal. Okay, so now here we are. At present, charts are set up on the basis of the personality condition or of the personality ray. Now they are different. The condition and the ray are different. It's possible to know something about the personality condition without knowing the ray. One can know about the personality condition without knowing about the ray. So our normal charts are set up to relate to the personality of the individual for whom the chart is read. If the astrologer is fortunate enough to know or to guess it accurately, this suggests that some degree of guessing, intelligent guessing, may be allowed. Actually, those who specifically know their ray are those to whom Master DK has given it, or individuals that he has discussed from a historical perspective, but probably they wouldn't be interested or they've passed on, because he tends to speak not so much of living individuals, although he did of Franklin Roosevelt, suggesting that he had the first ray. He was a first ray disciple, i.e. a first ray soul. And he suggested the presence of the first ray, well, at least Leo in the chart of Hitler, those protagonists in the great battle of the Second World War. Fortunate enough to know or to guess. Well, it's almost as if one cannot do accurate esoteric astrology unless we know this particular ray, the personality ray, and we are allowed to hazard a guess and to set up the chart accordingly, looking perhaps for the planet which particularly conducts the ray of the personality as we understand it. If, however, the subject is an advanced person, and by that I assume DK means someone who is coming under spiritual influence, let us say coming under soul influence, then the chart will be frequently wrong, as the planets which govern in the case of ordinary or undeveloped man have ceased to influence the spiritual man of the disciple. Well, let's just say, and DK tells us this later, they also influence, but to a lesser degree, and are absorbed by the higher planet. For instance, the esoteric ruler, the influence of the esoteric ruler overcomes the influence of the exoteric ruler, but the exoteric ruler does not cease to function. In other words, if you are, let us say, an Aquarian, and you're normally influenced exoterically by Uranus, and Jupiter, its esoteric rulership, becomes more prominent, it does not necessarily mean that Uranus will cease to influence you as an Aquarian, but the Jupiter will be progressively more important. Okay, so, but he tells us the chart may be wrong if we do not consult the higher ruler. Average man is primarily conditioned in the events of his physical plane life, the position of the planets in the 12 houses. So this is one of those important statements that when looking at the average individual, and sometimes we have to do the horoscopes of people who are simply interested in their personality and not in spiritual development. Then the positions of the planets in the houses, and presumably a rather exoteric interpretation of the signs of those planets, will be the major contributing factor. We will have to understand how man is relating to the 12 types of experience in which, as a personality, he seeks to progress, to prosper, to succeed. So average man is primarily conditioned in the events of his physical plane life by the position of the planets in the 12 houses, and they are in turn conditioned by certain karmic influences, which the advanced man has overcome. So the houses are conditioned, he seems to be saying, by certain karmic influences. In other words, we owe, let us say, how can we put it here? We owe karmic debts in various of the houses. It may be in the house of relationship we owe these debts. It may be in our home circumstances, number 4. It may be in terms of our resources that we owe the debts. You can go around each one of the 12 houses of the horoscope, and you can think of the kind of debts that might be owed. You know, perhaps a clarification of identity is due in the first house, and we have not been sufficiently self-knowing, and we have an obligation to become so. Or that we actually literally owe money, substance. We owe in terms of vitality. Or we may owe in the third house obligations involving much traveling and communication and establishing lines of connection where perhaps before we denied them or disrupted them, and so it can go. If we disrupted or disharmonized something, conditions in one of the 12 houses, we will come in for an equilibrizing, a karmic equilibrizing in a future life. We may owe a life. We may have confused people in our teaching. Well, that's easy to do. We may have misled people. We may have offered false teachings. This will be a karmic obligation in the 9th house. We may have to adjust our lives in relation to our career. We may have pursued something selfishly there, and we may have to undertake a career which is more selfless. Every one of those houses can speak about the karmic debts and balancing which is required. So, you can go through the houses of the chart and find their general meaning, and then see whether you are debt-free in these houses. I think wherever Saturn is found, one is not particularly debt-free. There is an obligation in the house where Saturn is found, and we have to see what it is we owe, what type of action should be brought to bear to make things right in that particular house. As well, the moon may be a karmic indicator in that respect, and perhaps the south node as well. Okay, so the houses are conditioned by certain karmic influences, Saturn being among the foremost, which the advanced man has overcome or is overcoming. So the same kind of liability in a particular house does not exist for the advanced man. But then the key is, for whom are you doing this horoscope? And how accurate is your intuition when it comes to understanding the individual for whom you are doing the horoscope? Okay, the horoscope will be cast eventually on the basis of the soul ray. Now, one of the things that's important here is to find the soul ray ruler. In the case of second ray souls, it would be Jupiter. In the case of first ray souls, of Vulcan. Or perhaps Pluto would be involved, although that's a non-sacred planet. Saturn would be for third ray souls, Mercury for fourth ray souls, Venus for fifth ray souls, Neptune or perhaps Mars for sixth ray souls, and Uranus for seventh ray souls. It will be cast eventually on the basis of the soul ray, and so one could put that soul ray ruler on the ascendant. One could superimpose it on the ascendant or build up a chart in which the first house is the position of the solar ray ruler, and perhaps indications will be given, intuitive astrology will be there. And then the zodiacal signs which govern the activities and the influence of the present group of planetary rulers will be considerably lessened. So it will be set up on the basis of the solar ray, but let us remember that the zodiacal constellations, sometimes called signs, are very active even on the monadic level, as he has told us. They're certainly active on the soul level, as he has told us. And they do have ordinary elemental types of influence as well. But when a soul ray horoscope is set up, he's telling us that the zodiacal signs, which influence the present group of planetary rulers, will be considered, reduced in importance. Okay. Now, what is interesting there is that we have certain planets through which we can move backwards and look at the zodiacal signs. So let us say that we have the influence of Mars prominent in the chart. We could go back to the sign Aries, and we would find that that particular zodiacal sign would be reduced in its lower influence. I won't say higher influence because, as we recall, the signs do influence the soul and do influence the monad. Instead, we might trace a line from Mars to Scorpio and find, of which Mars is the esoteric ruler, and find that the scorpionic influence had increased in its influence. DK says some very tricky things here, and it's important to not just read superficially. He seems to be saying that zodiacal signs related to orthodox planetary rulers will be reduced, and if we consider the esoteric planetary rulers, the zodiacal signs will become of more significance. New planetary potencies conveying zodiacal energies. This is the key. You're actually looking at the esoteric ruler as a kind of a soul conduit, and you're looking for the kind of zodiacal energies they convey, these new esoteric rulers. New planetary rulers, potencies, conveying zodiacal energies will control and take precedence of the old ones, thus putting the man in touch with different forces. Now, one of the things we could do is say, okay, this is a disciple, and therefore we have to look at every planet as if it were an esoteric ruler rather than an orthodox ruler. So when we go around the planetary collection, well, let us say we would consider the planet Jupiter. Jupiter would normally lead us toward Pisces or toward Sagittarius, which would be considered important, and Jupiter would be considered to be conveying zodiacal influence from those two signs. But if we are a disciple, we are going to trace a line from Jupiter to Aquarius, and when we look at Jupiter, we will think of it as conveying Aquarian energies. We will think of Saturn not as conveying Capricornian or early Aquarian energies, but as conveying later Capricornian energies, more highly developed Capricornian energies. In that case, Saturn rules both exoterically and esoterically Capricorn. When we look at Mercury, We're not going to draw a line straight to Gemini and to Virgo, although there would be naturally some conveying of influence, but rather when we find Mercury, we will draw a line to Aries and see what energies might be coming through Mercury from the sign Aries. When we consider Venus, we won't normally go to Libra or Taurus, but rather to Gemini. When we consider, let's see, where are we now? I've been going by the rays, okay, but now maybe I ought to go in planetary order. I did Jupiter already. I did Mars. If we're looking, and I did Saturn, if we're looking at Uranus, it would normally convey Aquarian energies, but now when we focus on the energy of Uranus, we're going to say, what does Libra have to say about that Uranian expression? We will trace a line towards Libra, where Uranus is the esoteric ruler. When it comes to Neptune, well, normally we would go to Pisces, where there's still plenty of control of Neptune, because Neptune is a very high ruler in Pisces. But we would not go automatically to Pisces, but also include the sign Cancer, where Neptune is the esoteric ruler. And finally, with Pluto, well, I think we go to Scorpio normally, as Pluto is a sub-ruler of Scorpio, and still is very connected with Scorpio, an important means through which Scorpio can express. But we will go to Pisces and say, how will the Piscean influence come through this planet? So putting man in touch with different forces. So if you are a disciple, trace every planet back to the sign which that planet rules esoterically. And this is a different angle, isn't it? You know, because let's just say that as a disciple, we should be responding to every planet from an esoteric or soul perspective. And normally we will say, well, I understand the connections of this planet. They're the following, based upon exoteric rulerships. But now when we look at a planet, we will say, what is coming through to me from this particular sign which the planet rules esoterically? And we can do that with all of us. In other words, all the planets. In other words, rather than read the planet alone, we will read it in such a way that an esoteric influence is coming through the planet from a particular sign or constellation. I don't know if I've ever done that in my own chart. All of us can do that, and it would be we would say what zodiacal sign is added to the influence of this planet simply because I am a disciple and should be responding to this planet in a disciplic manner. So that's a new, that's an angle which I have not emphasized, and a new angle for some, including myself. And it all comes from careful reading. You see, this is the thing. It's so easy to just gloss over what DK says, and we realize that the zodiacal signs are controlled in their intensity in the astrological chart by the nature of the individual, what type of individual he is and how he's responding to the planets. Of course, if a particular sign is your rising sign or your sun sign, you naturally do look to the esoteric ruler at a certain stage of development, and that's a pretty straightforward method of proceeding. But just remember, add a particular sign to a planet according to the nature of your development. In other words, when you are an average individual and you're looking at the influence of Jupiter, do not add Aquarius. Simply stick with Sagittarius and Pisces. Finally, the time will come when the individual, when he will be sensitive to the whole range of vibrations. Charts will be set up which will be called charts of the crosses, and not the indications of planetary influences in the 12 houses. Now already this is being done, and some whole sign charts are being set up. Let's see if we can take a look at what one of them might look like. Let's see, what do I have here? This is a solar fire coming in. And let's see, I'll just take my own chart for example. And I have final charts, trying to determine always by. Okay, so this is a normal chart in the Placidus system. But if I edit this chart in such a way that I have whole sign chart, copy and edit, and what I'll do is go over here and we will have, let's say whole signs, MC on the 10th, whole signs. Okay, here it is. So now everything starts at 0 degrees on the ascendant, and crosses are created. Here is a cardinal cross starting with Cancer, going to Capricorn, with Aries and Libra, respectively, at the top and bottom of the chart. And so it will be the arms of these crosses which will be of importance. There will be one cross which is cardinal, one cross which is fixed, and one cross which is mutable. And every arm will be ruled by a number of planets. We will not discount the exoteric rulers, but we will add the esoteric rulers and even the hierarchical rulers. So an entire cross will have many, many planets to which the high initiate will begin to respond. Let's just say here in the case of the cardinal cross, Cancer is ruled by the moon and Neptune. We can discount the moon. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn and Venus. Aries is ruled by Mars, Mercury, and Uranus. And Libra is ruled by Venus, Uranus, and Saturn. And so the collection of all of those planets, Mercury is involved, Venus is involved, Mars is involved. Let's see, is Jupiter? No, Jupiter is not involved there. Saturn is definitely involved. Uranus is involved. Neptune is involved, and Pluto is not involved. So on this particular cross, the individual has to learn to respond to all of the influences, probably with the Cancerian influences in this case being foremost. Now, if I wanted to build up a cross based upon the point opposite the sun sign, which would be a monadic cross, then the hierarchical influences would definitely have to be considered, and the Libran rulers of Venus, Uranus, and Saturn would be foremost. And we can go around to every one of the crosses dealing with the triplicities, or rather the quadruplicities of cardinal, fixed, and mutable, and find the range of influences to which the individual should respond. Now, we don't necessarily have to include the cardinal cross yet, but when we're dealing with the rising sign cross, we should include both esoteric and exoteric influences, and also we should deal with the sun sign cross. In other words, the cross on which the sun sign is found, and later he will deal with that. If, for instance, I'm an Aries in my sun sign, then I have to consider Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, and all of the exoteric and esoteric influences, planetary influences which come on that cross. And eventually I will learn to respond to all of them. Finally, of course, the very advanced individual responds to the entire range of vibration. We might also say that, comes to my mind, that most of us are on the fixed cross, or the cross in which the soul is attempting to emerge. Soul development is paramount on that cross. And so we would look at the rulers of the fixed cross, and we would say, because we are at that stage of evolution, we should be responding to the rulers of the fixed cross. We'll leave out the cardinal, we'll leave out the hierarchical rulers for the moment. So all of us, let's say between the first and third initiation, something of that nature, should be learning how to respond to not only Venus, but Vulcan in Taurus, not only the sun veiling perhaps Jupiter, but the sun veiling Neptune in Leo, not only the lower aspect of Mars, but a higher and more valorous aspect of Mars in Scorpio, and not only inventive individual Uranus, but group inclusive Jupiter, esoterically ruling in Aquarius. We should be learning how to respond to all of these simply because we are at that stage of evolution. Once we became true initiates of the third degree and beyond, and even especially beyond, we would have to learn how to respond to the hierarchical rulers on the cardinal cross as well. Okay, there are different ways of looking at this. You can have, obviously, initiates for whom different crosses, mutable, fixed, or cardinal cross, are important, in which case you would include the hierarchical rulers. Suffice it to say, the initiate becomes increasingly sensitive to an abstracted interpretation of the planets applied to his spiritual development and not applied so much to success, personality success within circumstances. So in a way, the charts of the crosses lift the whole consideration out of physical personal circumstance and apply these energies to the development of consciousness and the development of will. This is a whole new area of astrology, and obviously you have to have those people for whom it really applies in order to begin seeing how it works and making the proper kinds of determinations, judgments, and measurements. Finally, the time will come when he, the advancing individual, will be sensitive to the whole range of vibrations. Charts will then be set up which will be called charts of the crosses, and they will not be house limited. They will deal with the energies which produce the house, or which are usually found expressing in the house, but the energies will not be limited by the house. And so an entirely different focus upon a particular aspect of the individual will be emphasized. And rather than how are you doing in circumstances, it will be how are you doing in consciousness? How are you doing in the development of your divine purpose and divine will? And these charts will not be simply indications of planetary influences in the 12 houses. I hope I've made that a little bit clear. Obviously, we could spend a whole class on the meaning here, and we could work out exercises for determining these things. And I will trust that if this series of instructions is ever attended to by people who have interest and who are teaching astrology, that they can work out the necessary exercises to differentiate between planets which are circumstantially applied in the normal field of phenomena and planets which are more subjectively applied to the real purpose of esoteric astrology, which is the growth and development of consciousness and eventually the expression of divine purpose through the divine will. And then, writing 80 years ago, DK says something which may well still apply today. I question whether there is any living astrologer, I suppose, in the body capable of doing this as yet. And this, of course, is a challenge, and a number of very fine living astrologers, I know them personally, have made attempts at developing the charts of the crosses, but then the question is, to whom are they going to be applied? How many of us can really take this synthetic point of view and respond in some sort of circular, spherical manner to all the available influences? What we can do is to see on the particular cross on which our sun is found, how many of these influences we are responding to and how we are responding to them. We have to evaluate ourselves in that way. We can take our rising sign cross, maybe it's different from the sun sign cross, and see how well we are responding to the diversity of influences offered. Eventually, if we really get brave and perhaps a little foolish, we can look at the monadic point cross. It will be the same as the sun sign cross, but we can see the extent to which we may be beginning to respond to the hierarchical rulers. It's not just a question of going in there and interpreting a chart. The individual using astrology has to ask himself many questions about how he actually uses these energies, and he should use himself as a source of understanding, knowledge, and wisdom in this regard, rather than going for conventional interpretations. So who knows, 80 years later, are there any living astrologers capable of doing this as yet? Well, we can certainly make our attempts in specific classes that are with fairly advanced people targeting this type of interpretation. These are the kind of charts by which the masters gauge their disciples, and they are most interesting. Oh, don't you just wish you could qualify to be a member of the astrological department of hierarchy and be in a fit condition to observe these kinds of charts and to use them profitably for yourself and for others. They are most interesting. I'm sure that our sun sign is a major factor here, and our rising sign is a major factor, and the crosses on which they are found are major. And if they are both found on the same cross, in my own case it is, and I know many people for whom the sun and rising sign are found on the same cross, then it's a question of the ways we respond to the different planetary rulerships. Is our response really a soul response, or is it more simply a personal response? These charts of the crosses are the ones that are prepared prior to the third initiation, at which time the man begins his approach to the cardinal cross of the heavens. Now, note, it is just an approach. He is not yet on the cardinal cross, and will not be until after the fourth initiation and more like the fifth initiation. So before the third initiation, charts of the crosses are prepared, I suppose, to see the degree of spiritual response a man has to the particular cross on which his sun sign and rising sign are found. At the third initiation, spirit aspect begins to emerge, and there must be a more synthetic, rounded out type of response if that initiation is to be taken. And let us remember that before the initiate is initiated, he is initiate. Okay, he is an initiate before he is initiated, so this factor of synthesis has to be growing in the initiate of the third degree. I would remind you, even though it is a piece of useless information, don't we just love those, that the fifth major initiation of our planet is the first cosmic initiation. Well, that's pretty tricky, just as the third initiation is the first systemic. Well, I think what he means is that the third initiation is the first solar initiation, in which perhaps the solar, rather than strictly planetary energies, play a very big part. The term major initiation is sometimes ambiguous because he has said the major initiations don't begin until the third initiation. in which case it would be the seventh initiation of man being listed as the fifth major. But at other points in the books, he does talk about the normal initiations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as being major, and he distinguishes between those initiations and earlier pre-monastic initiations. Let us say there are at least 4 initiations of the elements that are occurring between, I think, the first and second initiation, and there are 2 earlier initiations that precede the first, and they involve the opening of different tiers of petals and the instilling of a kind of incipient group consciousness in the man, even though it's not enough to give him the first true initiation, which is the birth of the Christ in the heart. So I think here he's telling us that our fifth initiation of mastership, of revelation, is really the first cosmic initiation, and it's the first initiation which relates us to that cosmic center we call Sirius, in relation to which we have become a kind of a first-degree initiate or an entered apprentice in the great Blue Lodge of Sirius. So let us remember that the first 2 initiations, the birth and the baptism, are planetary, strictly planetary in nature. The third initiation begins a series of solar initiations. The fifth initiation is still solar in a certain respect, but it begins the initiations related to Sirius, which probably take us 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, probably all the way up to the 9th initiation, and certainly to the 7th, which is being achieved by the Christ, and the Christ is considered a Syrian initiate of a certain type, namely a transfigured Syrian initiate, because the 7th initiation is the transfiguration in relation to the Syrian system of initiations. Yes, and that's what it says here. I guess I'm just repeating what I could have been reading. The first 2 initiations are planetary in their implications. The above statement has deep and esoteric astrological significance. Well, we could ponder on that one for a long time. Let's just say that the soul, the higher ego, is the solar factor within man and is informed by a solar angel coming from the heart of the sun, of the central spiritual sun. So in a way, we are beginning our true solar life when we take the third initiation. Now, inasmuch as the Buddhic influence and even the monadic influence is present on soul levels, even at the first and second initiation, something of that solar influence is coming in, but we don't really become solarized beings, partially solarized beings, until the third initiation, the third of the major initiations, which is the first really major initiation. Terminology fluctuates in this respect, and it's important to understand the larger configuration to see what decay means at any particular point. So we have a non-sacred planet here, and the first 2 initiations, birth and baptism, are non-sacred. The initiates are still initiates of the threshold, and these are initiations of the threshold. And the individual is not by any means a sacred individual. He still has many, many battles, just the way our planet has not yet achieved its third initiation, nor has our sun. And they have many, many battles, those particular logoi, before that high state of transfiguration is achieved, as Sirius has achieved it, and as Venus, in one respect, has achieved it. And, the deep esoteric astrological significance, we could go on and on attempting to fathom. But I think I've offered a little bit about planetary, solar, and Syrian initiations. And if we are taking the third initiation, we're not a first-degree initiate in the Syrian scheme, but maybe we are an awakening disciple in relation to the Syrian scheme, or the Syrian constellation, and we can be then influenced by Sirius. we are told that it is only at the third initiation that Sirius really begins its influence upon the initiate. That's not enough, however, to make of the developing disciple a first-degree initiate in the Sirian scheme. I guess I used the word scheme there. Okay, what is the scheme? Well, there are planetary schemes, and we can think of solar schemes, and we can even think of constellational schemes. A lot of these, okay, okay, only staff, not now, okay. I hope this is, your network connection has been reestablished. Okay, we have an interesting thing going on here. And I'm going to terminate. I'm having some pretty strong Mercury retrograde issues here. This may be a shorter, I have no knowledge of when my network connection was ended. So I hope it's not a very, very short tape, and if it is, I'll have to go over that material. But for the moment, let us simply end number 40. We have reached it. Let's end with an Om, and we are on EAA, end of EAA number 41, and we have gone from page 88 to 90. Something has been disconnected, I'm sorry to say, and we will see whether it is serious or not. Okay, in any case, the audio should not be a problem. And we will simply end with an Om, with light and love and power, restore the plan on earth. And we are in a good place to start because it's a new section, and Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 42 will begin, and hopefully we will not have too much problem from retrograde Mercury, which should end tomorrow. Okay, so I will sign off at this point because I don't even know whether what I'm saying is actually recording on the webinar per se. Hence I'm making short shrift of this, and we'll go on and hope to do better. Okay, everybody, we'll see you at the next Esoteric Astrology Adventure. Bye-bye for now.